Hidden away in Australia's remotest corners are mysterious creatures found nowhere else on Earth. In all sorts of shapes, sizes and colours, but all belong to the same shy treetop community that only emerges at night, the possums. Of all these assorted possums, one has infiltrated a new wilderness. In the urban jungle of Melbourne, the dusk that signals the end of the working day also marks the start of the city's alternative nightlife, brush-tail possums. As well as being occasional curbside crawlers, these possums regularly drop in on quieter gardens, rather like squirrels do in other parts of the world. These suburban pit stops are linked by thoughtfully placed assault courses, a breeze for a possum born to be in branches. Some routes require an even finer sense of balance. Australia belonged to possums long before people took over. Like many other true natives, such as kangaroos and koalas, possums are marsupials. The females have an inbuilt pouch for their young. Inside this safe incubator, the walnut-sized joey can finish off the first stage of its growing. It can get a bit cramped in there. The saucer-like eyes it will need to see in the dark develop early. When they're bigger, young ringtail possums have to travel piggyback, their feet locking on as tight as a vice, though some don't get much of a view. Urban possums started out here in the rainforest, which still teems with their relatives, possums that have never left their ancestral birthplace. There are no monkeys, woodpeckers or squirrels in Australia. Instead, possums have evolved to fit into every nook and fill every cranny of the rainforest. But few will show their faces before nightfall. This is a 3D lattice of walkways made of twisting vines, leafy ropes and scaffolds of branches, the perfect place for possums. Sharp claws help when things get vertical. And tails are essential for balance. All useful when intruders need seeing to. Possum tails are also prehensile. They can twist round branches like additional limbs. The spotted cuscus's tail is naked, with ridges like the tread on a tire to give it an excellent grip. Latching on is something that the hairier Herbert River ringtail can do too. The lemur possum's personal safety rope is even furrier and takes a lot of looking after. Possums' menus differ as much as their tails do. Some concentrate on leaves, which are not very nutritious, so a leaf eater such as the green possum has to spend most of its time eating, just to keep itself ticking over. To avoid competition, different possums eat different plants. But the striped possum specialises in top-quality food, 4-star fuel that enables it to go up a gear and lead a more energetic lifestyle. Its larder is down below, so unlike its ground-shy relatives, the striped possum often forages on the forest floor. It even has its own toolkit to help in the search. The first piece of gear is a long, skinny finger, which the possum wraps on the wood, listening for a hollow or some reaction that it has provoked from underneath. Having pinpointed its victim's hiding place, the possum must now extract its meal. It inserts its second tool, a long tongue. Then it unsheaths a pair of long, strong, chisel-like teeth that gouge out the decaying wood. Some of its instruments are multi-purpose. The tapping finger is also a deadly probe. The grub is a neatly packaged capsule of pure energy, well worth the trouble. As well as adjusting well to the rainforest, possums also thrive in some very odd places, thanks to an astonishing evolutionary ability to cope with change. 5 million years ago, the climate of Australia became drier, and much of the rainforest disappeared. It was replaced by great tracts of tall eucalypt woodlands, that now cloak much of Australia. But there are no highways of vegetation linking these widely spaced trees, no tangles of branches between the treetops. Yet, in spite of the apparent difficulties, some possums live even here, and, like their rainforest relatives, they too emerge only after dark. If they were going to survive, though, these possums had to find a mode of transport that was quick, efficient, and safe. And they did. If you can't go over land, why not go by air? These are the gliders. Possums that plane through the air on broad skin flaps that unfold upon takeoff. They can control their flight path and their landing with great precision. As they touch down on their vertical landing strip, they dig in their claws in order not to fall off. Yellow-bellied gliders fly to specially selected trees to tuck into their favourite food, sap, which oozes out of the gashes they make in the bark. The trunk is pockmarked with the scars of old cuts. Most possums are solitary, but yellow-bellies live in groups, and it's no silent get-together. They're one of the noisiest of all marsupials. Adult males have scent glands on the head, chest, and at the base of the tail. Relatives smear themselves in the dominant male's smell by rubbing against him. It's a sort of scented family signature. In this way, everyone can work out who's who with one whiff. Strange-smelling intruders can be kept away, and for now, there's a fragile calm. But these aren't the only gliders around. The smaller sugar glider also has a tooth that's sweet. But it's not strong enough to bite through such thick bark, so the sugar glider has to sup at the table prepared by others. But the cat-sized host rumbles the rat-sized trespasser. Another freeloader, the mouse-sized feather-tail glider, tucked out of view. It laps up the sap unnoticed. Sugar gliders, like most gliders, are sociable creatures, and more of them soon land to collect whatever's going. But the uneasy peace soon crumbles. It's not just strangers that need evicting. Members of the family can also step out of line. Being shooed off so unceremoniously doesn't matter too much to the sugar glider because it can eat other things. Nectar, for example. Whenever the eucalypt flowers are in bloom, there's plenty of that. And here there's less chance of clashing with other possums, so a sugar glider can take its time. Feathertails, too, find sweet things irresistible. They're so light that they can get right on top of their food. A bit like sitting in the middle of a box of chocolates. By dawn, all the possums have vanished. Sugar gliders have crawled into snug hollows where they spend the day curled up in clans of up to 7. Without these old trees to make their dens in, gliders would have nowhere to sleep and would soon perish. But a few very hardy possums can survive without trees. They've colonised one of the most hostile places in the whole of Australia. The alpine peaks of the southeast are so cold and so bleak that few creatures can survive there. Here, in the scree, over an area of just a few square kilometres, lives the tiny mountain pygmy possum. Like all other possums, it has a pouch, albeit one that barely looks big enough for a jelly bean. The pygmy possum hasn't eaten for months, for it hibernated through the winter, the only possum to do so. But now it's awake and ravenous, and the feast has just arrived. Moths, millions of them. Lining the rock like roof tiles, bogong moths escape the summer heat by retreating each year to the cool air of the mountains. The pygmy possum's fast is finally over. The possum barely has to lift a paw. The fat, rich, bite-sized morsels virtually fly down its throat. Without this seasonal banquet, the possum's babies would not be plump enough to live through the next winter, and this tiny super specialist would eventually disappear for good. Of all the places that possums have colonised, one of the strangest is much closer to home. Our home, that is. One brush-tailed possum has even made it to the top of a 10-storey brewery right in the middle of Brisbane. This possum is so common here that it gets only the most fleeting glance from the locals.
What's that? Museum. Oh, yeah, museum. I pretended you didn't have it. And I repeated it in Rome.
The brushtail is a living waste disposal system. It can eat just about anything, and when the chance arises, it does.
So your glass is empty.
Cleaning up leftovers has enabled the brushtail to spread further than any other Australian marsupial.
That's painful. I like that.
Where there's food, there's a brushtail possum. Normally loners, like other possums, the brushtails in Melbourne's Fitzroy Gardens are forced into groups because of their sheer numbers. Noisy quarrels are inevitable. Parks like this, where there's never a shortage of food, support huge numbers of brushtails. And here, where they rarely go hungry, brushtails can live for up to 10 years and sometimes breed twice a year. In spite of this, no possum is completely secure. Even the cities are not free from predators. Including some that are not native, but were brought here by people. Cats are often allowed out at night and are one of the biggest killers of all urban possums. The smaller ringtails are particularly at risk. To the cat, the ringtail is just asking to be chased. The ringtail, however, could be looking death in the eye. Urban possums do have some habits that don't endear them to the local people, such as eating ornamental roses, which tends not to go down too well. Not so much a feast for the eyes as just a plain feast. As well as not being terribly fussy about what they eat, brushtails aren't too bothered about where they make their dens. Unlike most other possums, they don't depend entirely on tree holes to make their nests. Sometimes sheds do just as well. It's not just bed, but breakfast too. Sometimes they become even more neighbourly and take up tenancy in attics. It's a ridiculous time to be asleep anyway. From the possum perspective, of course. But there's no need to lose sleep over urban possums. A few simple possum-proofing measures should deter squatters. Sometimes, however, the problems caused by a single animal can be far more serious than a bad night's kip. To an urban ringtail, electric cables are there to be used in exactly the same way as branches in the rainforest. The acrobat is unfazed by heights and grips the high wire with more confidence than the most skilled tightrope walker. There are no safety nets here, though. Mistakes can be fatal. One false move and everything short-circuits. Every year, hundreds of thousands of homes suffer from power cuts caused like this.
But always seems to be...
But living with possums doesn't have to cause problems. Artificial dens can help enormously.
First hour, 7 overs bowled and 52 runs scored, so they're they've taken the initiative away.
Putting nest boxes right outside the window means that possums are a novelty rather than a nuisance.
They have steadied and
Right
played
now,
very
though,
positively.
Pakistan is beating Australia in the third test. The live natural history show will just have to wait.
That's a magnificent six. Well, he's really decided to get stuck into that one. Belted it down the ground and it's gone way back.
It's Saturday night, time for Melbourne's locals to go out on the town and have some fun. But some make their way to the Fitzroy Gardens for the wildest time of all.
His little pink nose, come on. Come on.
Look, there's a big raisin there. Like raisins.
Come on.
There you go.
Gotta get
Oh,
down.
the Billy's whiskers.
The possums have got some families so well trained that they get fed every weekend.
Let's have this lovely bread.
Fantastic tail. Wow.
Come on, you've got to come
Look at the
down.
size of that tail, isn't it magnificent?
Yeah.
I can say it's teeth.
Oh, it's even
Is it
letting me
soft?
pat him. Wow. It's amazing.
It's hard to say who gets the most out of the encounter.
Oh, I want to have a turn. I want to touch.
Many people are unaware that this regular suburban visitor has dozens of different forest relatives hundreds of miles away, whose faces, though not quite so familiar, are just as endearing and just as fascinating. The possum's triumph is their enormous versatility, which has enabled these secretive nighttime creatures to spread into so many different places. Possums take on so many different forms and lead so many different lifestyles. But for most Australians, the word possum means one thing only: brushtail. Indeed, if success is measured by being able to live just about anywhere, then of all the possums, the brushtail in particular has scaled the dizziest of heights. Next week we follow the sagas at sea of the gannet, the biggest, heaviest and most spectacular seabird in the North Atlantic. It's a high dive champion that manages to survive even the greatest storms in the cruel seas around Britain.